And the Oscar for the best physics tragedy goes to King Kong. If this is your first time visiting this channel, the videos in the physics and film series are motivated by the work of the Hollywood directors. Each video is dedicated to a Fermi problem based on the scientific plot, or part of the plot, shown in one of the blockbuster Hollywood movies. Today's cinematographic Fermi problem is motivated by the King Kong movie, which is based on a script that has been proven a Hollywood favorite for selling tickets, but at the same time is an F-graded paper for physics. King Kong is a Hollywood classic first shown in 1933 with remakes in 1976 and 2005. In fact, the comments and calculations presented in this video are applicable to any movie in which an existing animal is magnified to an immense size. Examples are the additional King Kong franchise movies, the Colossal Man movies, and the 50-Foot Woman movies. In all the above-mentioned movies, a human or a gorilla of enormous size is shown. However, the physics of going XXL was never consulted. Obviously, there will be habitat problems, feeding problems, hiding problems, and many other living-related issues which straightforward logic automatically raises. Yet, we will bypass them, and our focus will be exclusively on scaling. That is, constructing an identical copy of a living animal at a much larger size. Galileo Galilei, the famed Italian physicist and astronomer, in his book Two New Sciences, which was published in 1638, was the first person to observe how the strength of materials and the principles of geometry apply to living organisms. Creating an identical copy of an object, but with different dimensions, is called isometric scaling. Following Galileo's insight, we will show that isometric enlargement of animals leads to a tragedy. Given an animal, we can compute the pressure at any point of its body as the ratio of the load over the area carrying the load. When the animal is not carrying extra weight, the load is just the portion of the weight for the part of the body which is above the point of interest. And since the weight is proportional to the mass, which is proportional to volume, we conclude that the pressure is proportional to the ratio of the volume over the area. For the enlarged animal, the same relation is true, but the volume and area are those of the enlarged animal. The index S stands for scaled and indicates the quantities of the enlarged animal. If the scale factor is S, then area is scaled by the square of S and volume scaled by the cube of S. Then it is straightforward to drive that pressure scales linearly in S. It is obvious that if S is large, then PS will exceed the compressive strength of the bones, and the enlarged animal will collapse under its own weight. If PC is the compressive strength of the weakest bone and P0 the pressure on it when the animal is at regular size, then the ratio PC over P0 determines a critical scale factor, above which the animal is crushed by its own weight. For S below SC, gravity allows the enlarged animal to survive. But this is only true as long as the animal does not perform any physical activities. Adult male gorillas range in height 1.65 to 1.75 meters and in mass 140 to 200 kilograms. Like humans, their weakest part is the trabecular material in the lumbar vertebrae. The compressive strength of the trabecular material is 5 megapascals, and the cross-sectional area of the lumbar vertebrae is 1,500 to 2,500 square millimeters. Let's apply the previous results to King Kong. In the 2005 King Kong movie, comparing King Kong with other objects, it seems that the director implies a scaling factor of S equals 6 or S equals 7. To give the director an advantage, let's assume that the scale factor is equal to 6. Assuming that 2/3 of the gorilla mass is above the waist, and using the lower bound of the weight, the lumbar vertebrae support about 93 kilograms. Then, using the maximal cross-sectional area of the lumbar vertebrae, we calculate that the pressure on the trabecular material is about 0.37 megapascals. Therefore, the critical scale factor for a gorilla is about 13.5. Hence, King Kong does not crush under its own weight despite some erroneous statements that are usually made. However, the previous statement does not imply that King Kong is safe. Other physical laws will lead to his demise. Let's work out an explicit example to exaggerate King Kong's strength, agility, and endurance. The director includes in the movie a lot of feats, often in rapid succession. He fights multiple huge creatures. He runs, he jumps, he falls off cliffs, he climbs, he lifts heavy objects, he breaks objects, and much more. However, he is anything else but invincible. To demonstrate his fragility, I will only take an innocent action. Jumping off a small cliff which has a height of 2 meters and landing on the ground in an upright position. To find the pressure felt by King Kong's spine, we first do the calculation for a regular gorilla. Just before the gorilla touches the ground, he has an approximate speed of 6 meters per second. The corresponding momentum for the mass above the waist is 558 kilograms times meters per second. Upon hitting the ground applies a force for a small duration, which brings the gorilla to a stop. The smaller the duration, the greater the force. A reasonable estimation for the duration is 0.1 second. Therefore, the force felt on the spine is about 5,580 newtons, and the pressure felt by the lumbar vertebrae of a regular gorilla is about 2.23 megapascals. In the case of King Kong, this small jump for the size of his body will generate a pressure of about 13.4 megapascals, which will damage severely his trabecular material. Similar results apply to human giants. For example, in the case of the colossal man and the 50-feet woman, assuming an average size of 6 feet for humans, they are isometric copies of their original bodies with a scaling factor greater than 8. Therefore, the disadvantageous consequences will manifest sooner and more profoundly than in the case of King Kong. In any case, I will ignore the fact that big isometric enlargements of animals cannot survive through the laws of physics, since I want to point out that if these giants could actually exist, the events shown in the movies cannot happen the same way we are familiar with. For example, to a very basic level, human walking may be approximated as oscillations by a simple pendulum. Then the formula for the period of the oscillations provides the pace of the walking. For a scale factor of 6, the pace changes by a factor of square root of 6. For a scale factor of 8, the pace changes by a factor of square root of 8. Hence, the colossal man's and the 50-feet woman's leg movements must necessarily happen 2.8 times faster than those of regular humans. This pace is not their jogging. It is their normal walking. However, in the movies we see that they walk and move like regular humans. Similarly, King Kong moves like a regular gorilla. The tendency to portray King Kong as a super athlete provides additional examples. For example, we are shown that he can jump much higher and over much longer distances than a regular gorilla. Therefore, let's do a simple calculation to decide how much better his abilities are. To reach a height h, a regular gorilla needs to expend energy, which is at least as much as the potential energy he will have at the height h. Notice that the potential energy is proportional to his mass m and hence proportional to his volume v. The energy used for the jump was harvested from the food he ate and was stored in his body. During the jump, he converts it to elastic energy of his leg muscles. This elastic energy is proportional to the mass of the muscles M'. Therefore, if V' is the volume of the muscles used in the jumping and ρ' their density, the elastic energy equals K times ρ' times V', where K is a coefficient that depends on the body of the gorilla. From the last two equations, the height of the jump is computed in terms of gorilla's body characteristics and the acceleration of gravity. This result is independent of the scale factor. If a gorilla can jump only up to 1 meter high, King Kong can also jump up to 1 meter high, and compared to his body, it will appear as negligible. We have thus established that not only King Kong and the colossal man and the 50-feet woman cannot exist, but every and each little detail seen in the movies contains conflicts with the existing physical laws. And with this comment, we have concluded today's video. I hope you liked today's cinematographic Fermi problems. If you did, please subscribe to my channel to help the creation of more content like this. Thanks a lot for your support.